Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Happy afternoon to those of you tuning in from the East Coast. Good morning to everybody on Pacific time. My name is Zach Corbin, digital marketing specialist here at First Name, and we're really excited to present the sixth installment of our Lunch and Learn series. And so it's a little bit different than traditional webinar formats. We take about 15 minutes to dive in on one specific topic, and then we leave a little bit of time at the end of the presentation for some Q&A. So as I go through the presentation, please make sure you're utilizing the chat function as part of Zoom to put your questions in there, and I'll make sure that we have a little bit of time at the end of the presentation to get to those questions. So like I said, one of our First Name Lunch and Learn series, in today's topic, we're going to be talking all about marketing metrics, and really in particular, focusing on what's important, focusing on those metrics that matter. And before we get into that presentation, I want to talk a little bit about us as a company. So First Name was launched to change the way that organizations do fundraising in the digital space. And how do we do that? Well, we offer a complete personalized digital fundraising solution. That includes everything from our technology platforms. So if you're looking for a giving day or a crowdfunding or an everyday giving option, we have those technology options, as well as a variety of different programs like our Digital Development Officer program and our Student Engagement Team program, which have been producing fantastic results for our client partners over the past year. In addition to that, we offer some additional services, strategic counsel, and then some digital marketing services as well, including work in the paid digital space. And all of that is designed to help you do digital better. Now, before we get into some of the marketing metrics and some of the work in Google Analytics, I think it's important for us to have a little bit of context to understand why everything is so important, why it's important to track things at this granular level. And as we sit here on this Zoom call in this remote environment, a year plus into the pandemic, it's probably not a surprise to say that we've seen an explosion and an acceleration in the digital engagement and digital fundraising space in the past year. And so if you open your phone up right now, you'll probably have a number of different social media apps on the phone. Not only are there billions of individuals who are members of those social media platforms, but as you can see in the graphic here, people who are a member of these platforms are logging on a daily basis. A lot of people on social media, but that's not the only channel that's seen an uptick in the past year. Email volume among nonprofits up 17% as well. And a lot of modern fundraising operations are implementing new sets of tools and tactics like text and paid digital, for example, becoming a lot more common as part of that modern advancement operations toolbox. Bottom line is, your prospects are online, your future donors are online, and it's important that we get better insight into their behavior. And that helps us operate efficiently. And so, we are entering into the digital decade of philanthropy, and I don't think there is one statistic that backs that up more than the first one on this slide here. Digital fundraising up big in 2020, up big to the tune of 32%. I don't think that's just a flash in the pan. That's something that's going to continue to build that email outreach, that paid social outreach, social media outreach in general on the rise. And like I mentioned before, there's a constantly evolving set of tools and tactics to engage people in the digital space that are part of these operations. And so it's important for us to be able to look and see all the different channels in play and really have that conversation and be able to use data to inform our strategy to know what's working and what we should be doubling down on and what's not working and what might need some course correction. And so I want to jump into this and talk about 4 specific items I think that every nonprofit organization should have as part of their repertoire. But before we talk about that, it's time to forget about vanity metrics. And what I'm talking about when I mention vanity metrics, I'm talking about reach, I'm talking about impressions, follower counts, even open rate to an extent. Those are really top of the funnel metrics, but are those what is really driving key actions? Those are large numbers, but it's not necessarily what's driving those key actions. So that's just a starting point for us. We really need to dig a little bit deeper and define what our key actions are and how we're going to go about measuring them. So the first thing I want to talk about are UTMs. So stands for Urchin Tracking Module Parameter, which is really just a fancy way to say you're adding on a little snippet of code to a normal URL. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow you to know where your traffic is coming to, where your traffic is coming from, and what that traffic is actually doing once they hit your site. And so with UTMs, it's really easy to go ahead and set these up. In fact, after this presentation, if you Google UTM Builder, Google has a tool set up for you, nice and easy. You put in the link that you want to build a UTM off of, and then you're going to put 3 additional items in there: source, medium, and campaign. So when we talk about source, that's where the link in your outbound marketing is embedded. So something like a newsletter, for example, or a Facebook post or a tweet is an example of something that would be in the source field for UTM. The medium is actually the marketing medium that is that part of that outbound marketing effort. So in the newsletter example, that's email. For the Facebook post or the tweet, that'd be social media. If you're doing paid digital, something like PPC or CPC would be your medium. And then finally, the campaign name is what the campaign is, the overall effort it's for. So something like a giving day, for example, might have leading up to the giving day a separate campaign, and then the days of a different campaign. And it's really important when you're going through and naming these that you create a consistent set of naming conventions that allow you to track and manage these UTMs in an easy and efficient manner. Something like a spreadsheet is totally fine to do. 1 column being the original URL, 3 columns for source, medium, and campaign. And then using that Google UTM Builder I mentioned, having that UTM actually sit in that last column. So it's nice and easy to be able to pull those UTMs anytime you need them. And what I like to do is actually in that spreadsheet have a separate tab for all my email marketing, all my social media marketing, all my paid digital, so on and so forth, just so it's nice and organized so we can track everything efficiently. Now, when you create those and you put those in your outbound marketing efforts, we want to be able to analyze and see those results. And so you're going to hop into Google Analytics. And when you're on the home screen of Google Analytics, there's a tab, an acquisitions tab that you're going to drop down. There's a couple different options there, but you're going to want to focus on the campaign section of the acquisition tab in Google Analytics. And when you jump into there, it's going to see all the campaigns you've set up with those UTMs, because when somebody visits your site, it's going to ping on the back end of Google Analytics and send that information for you to analyze at a later point. And the thing I love about this is you can also break it down on a really granular level by source or combining source and medium to see where that traffic is coming from and what that traffic is doing when it's on your site. And that's why it's important when the traffic is on your site, it's important for you to define and set up what the goals are in Google Analytics, what those key actions on your site are. So the first thing that comes to mind is making a donation. If I make a donation, maybe I hit a thank you page that's only accessible by making a gift. Well, what you can do is create a goal for every single time somebody hits that thank you page. Google Analytics is going to fire and send that confirmation that that goal was achieved. Other key actions on your site might be like when somebody enters their email to sign up for your newsletter, for example, or updates their information. We know that the longer somebody is on a site, the more likely they are to convert to a donor. So maybe you want to set up a goal that measures the time that people are on your website, 3 minutes or more, something like that. Those are all able to be tracked within Google Analytics. And so the goal is kind of step one, but it's important to see how often that goal is actually being converted. And so conversion rate, another key metric for us to be tracking, and you can actually track that by individual channel as well. And that can be really helpful to inform are people able to find what they're looking for on your site? Are they able to achieve your goals? Does your outbound marketing align with what you're asking people to do on your site? And so if your conversion rate is a little lower than you would like it to be, you can kind of reverse engineer and uncover where that problem might be. And again, doing this by individual channel level can also be really helpful. So how do you go about setting goals up in Google Analytics? Well, if you're logged in, you see a little gear in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, and that's the admin section. Once you click that, you're actually going to be presented with 3 different levels. There's an account level, a property level, and a view level. You're going to create and edit all your goals in the view level. And so you can track those key actions very easily, set them up. And once they are set up, you pop back over to the home screen on Google Analytics, and there's an actual conversion section that once you drop that down, you'll see the conveniently titled goals section where you can jump into there and see how often your goals are being hit and what channels are driving those key actions. But goals don't tell the whole picture, right? Especially when it comes to things like donations. We want to be able to go beyond just the initial transaction. And that's why I love the e-commerce functionality that Google Analytics is able to offer. What this does is it actually scrapes the gift amount from that giving form and attaches it to the transaction. So not only are you tracking raw donations, you're able to track how much money was brought in by those donations as well. And this is incredibly important to see the effectiveness of your marketing campaigns, to see, which channels are best at driving some of those bottom of the funnel actions, and also great when it comes to trying to establish what ROI looks like. And especially when it comes to paid digital, what does that return on your ad spend look like? E-commerce is going to help you do that. So how do you set this up? There are 2 ways to set it up. The first and probably easiest way to do this is through Google Tag Manager. If you're sitting there saying, I don't know what Google Tag Manager is, that's okay. We're going to do a future lunch and learn on that. So stay tuned for that announcement. But Google Tag Manager, it allows you to change bits of code in your website without actually having to know how to do it or manually do it yourself. And so once you set that up, you can do a number of different things, including set up this e-commerce functionality. The second option is you actually have to insert the code itself into the website. If you do not know how to do that, I do not recommend wading into those waters yourself. Buy your web developer a coffee. They'll be able to get it done for you. It's a pretty straightforward setup for somebody who knows their way around that code. Once you have it set up, where you view it is the same place that you viewed the goals in Google Analytics, and that's under the conversion tab, which is pictured on this screen right here. So you just drop that down and you can see what's presented in this screenshot that I took from the Google Analytics demo account. It allows you to see a lot of different things there. Revenue is pictured, but one of the things that also lets you see are the number of transactions. And so when you think about giving days or your calendar year end or fiscal year end campaigns, it's really helpful to be able to observe transactions by the hour so you can know where those peak donation periods are, and that will let you align future strategy to coincide when more people are online making a gift. And finally, the last thing that I want to talk about within Google Analytics are multi-channel funnels. And so we know that to be successful in the digital fundraising space, you need to have an integrated multi-channel strategy. So there are many touch points along a donor's journey from becoming a non-donor to a donor. And it's not always that linear path of I get an email, click on a link and make a gift. A lot of times there are a lot of different touch points across many different channels. What I love about multi-channel funnels is it gives proper attribution, and it lets you understand and have a greater knowledge of how all these channels are truly working in concert together to produce key results like donations for you. And so in the example that I gave, if I got an email and clicked and made a gift, normally we'd attribute the gift to that email. But multi-channel funnels allows you to capture much more of that data. So any channel that's involved along that donor journey, along that conversion path that is not the last click. So in this example, let's say I get an email, click through, don't make a gift. I'm then served up a targeted Facebook ad, don't make a gift from that. But eventually I see a tweet and I click on that link and make a gift. Well, social media is going to get credit for that last click gift, but email is going to get what Google Analytics calls an assisted conversion. And an assisted conversion, incredibly important, and allows you to see, again, how all these channels are working in concert with one another. And the great thing about this is if you have e-commerce set up, like we just talked about in this last slide, it actually gives a portion of that conversion's revenue to that channel as part of the assisted conversion. So a little bit more of an advanced tactic, but I think when you talk about, you combine things like UTMs, setting your goals up in Google Analytics, setting your e-commerce functionality up, and then utilizing this multi-channel function or multi-channel funnel within Google Analytics, it's incredibly powerful when you pair all of those things together. You have a much more complete understanding of how all of your marketing communication efforts feed in and produce key actions for your fundraising operation. So I'm going to pause there because I see we have a number of different questions here in our feed. Number one question, we're not tracking any of these metrics. Where should we start? That's a great question. And if you are not tracking anything that I talked about or not utilizing it, that's completely okay. You are not alone. What I would suggest is starting with those first two items we talked about. So number one being UTMs and number two being goals in Google Analytics. I would really encourage you to Google that UTM builder that I mentioned and build out those UTMs and start inserting them into your outbound marketing efforts. And then you're going to be able to track that on the Google Analytics side. And if you pair that with your goals, that's a nice 1-2 punch to start off with. And most importantly, it's going to give you the opportunity to be within Google Analytics. You're going to get more familiar with that interface and it starts to become a little bit old hat. So like anything, practice makes perfect. That's my suggestion, starting off at the kind of foundational level. Another question in here, you mentioned Google Tag Manager. What is this and why is it so important? Yes, another great question. So Google Tag Manager, sometimes people will call this GTM, but like I mentioned before, it gives you the ability to make changes to your website's code to track key actions through a process of tags and triggers without actually having to know how to code. And this is great because you don't have to go through your web developer. There are no bottlenecks in making those changes. And you can track a lot of different things. So on Google Tag Manager, you can install things like Facebook Pixel or other remarketing tags. And you can even do things like finding out how far into a video on your site somebody watches, or where within your giving form do they drop off on that form field. So a lot of those key actions. And what happens is when somebody does this, it all fires in the background based on the code that you insert with Google Tag Manager. And that then is fed back, which is really helpful for you to get some of that big picture items. I'd highly recommend the Google Analytics Academy actually has a nice intro course on Google Tag Manager. It is worth reviewing. I feel like many organizations could benefit from adopting and implementing Google Tag Manager into their operation. And then the last question here, do you have a suggested tool for building UTMs? Yes, exactly. So I think I mentioned this a couple times, but Google has a nice and easy tool, a UTM builder for you, where you put in the original URL, your source, your medium, your campaign name, if there's any content you want to be able to differentiate, and it produces a nice, easy UTM link for you, which you can copy, put in your spreadsheet, and then put into all of your outbound marketing efforts. So great questions there. I appreciate you taking the time to ask those questions. Up next, we don't have anything in particular scheduled, but we've got a lot more lunch and learns in the works. We're going to get those up on our website soon. So stay tuned on our social channels. Sign up for our newsletter if you're not signed up for that already. We've got a lot planned for this summer and the fall. But I hope that you took something valuable away from this presentation today. And really, there's a couple of things that I want to focus on is making sure that you're focusing on those key actions that happen on your website, but getting a better and deeper understanding of how they're produced, how your marketing efforts actually go and produce those, and give you ability to continue to refine your digital fundraising strategy. give you the ability to start doing digital better. And that's something that we can help you with. If there's anything that we talked about during this presentation today that you're interested in learning more about, please get in touch with me directly. My email's there on the screen at zach@firstname.co. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out and connect with me there. And I'm on Twitter as well at ZWCorbin. And First Name is a company. We're also on social media. So that's our Twitter handle right there. We also have Facebook and LinkedIn accounts. Give us a follow if you're not doing that already. And that's our website, firstname.co, where you can learn more about what we do, what we offer, and eventually you can watch a recording of this webinar as well. So I want to thank everybody again for their time. Hope you learned something valuable in this Lunch and Learn. And until the next time we talk, take care.